had a chance to watch the PBS or the KET program on the Black church that was shown this week. Quite a number of you, I hope. Do you have any initial thoughts or reactions to that first? That'd be my first question. Anything you'd like to say about what struck you with what you saw and what you heard? Any comments? Remember to unmute yourself if you're going to speak.
For some reason I can't.
Renee?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'll add a little bit, but please others think about what you want to say. I thought the program was remarkable. The resilience of the Black faithful was very inspiring. And I think I was most disturbed and touched by the church burnings. And I knew intellectually this happened, but to watch that happen again and again, and to consider the efforts and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building those churches. And as devastating as that was, they were rebuilt. So it was very inspiring and heart-wrenching, really, both things. Even though I knew this before, seeing it and just seeing how it happened over and over was very poignant and touching to me.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments, reactions, reflections on having watched the program?
Yes, I would like to share that I was touched, and not only touched, but the fact that they carried their music with them to where in their own style, their own culture of music to worship. Mm-hmm. And I've had the experience of working in a African American parish, and the spirit of their music and the interaction of ways of communicating during the service, during the mass, during the church service, letting the celebrant, the other people, letting them know that they are affirming what's being said or proclaimed, and also the faith of the African American people when things went south, when the struggles and trials, their faith kept them going. So those were some of the thoughts that I had as I watched the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Julia. I think one of the things that I hope came across very strongly is how much the peoples, the African Americans, and especially in the years of slavery, but even afterwards, they're clinging on to their faith and their belief and their hope and trust in a God who had something better for them than what they were experiencing was the key to their survival. And is the key to our survival, even in the midst of the racism we deal with today.
I was deeply touched by it myself. And just to see that their resilience and their faith in God never wavered at everything they were going through. And then it was just, I'm so deeply touched by their spirituality. I have been for, even when they were on that ship, we talked about everything. It's just their spirituality. And I came across this book I'm going to order. You might have read this before, Father. Forged in the Fiery Furnace, African American Spirituality. Have you read that before?
No, but I've heard of it.
It looks like it'd really be good. So I'm going to get that. It's just all about their deep spirituality, how that got them through. So yes, but that was a great movie. I mean, but it was like Susan said, it was just so heartbreaking just to see how they were just kept, burning the churches, and all that the African-American people had to go through was just unbelievable. But their faith never wavered.
Yes. For myself personally, it was very difficult and heart-wrenching for me to watch it, because for me, I'm reliving what I had already lived in those years past, back in the 50s and the 60s, and the turmoil and all of the unrest, the rioting, all of the things that have been ensued, and it was just very difficult to relive it. There was nothing in it that was new or surprising, but it was not easy to relive it again. The reason why I wanted to begin with this is, if you watch particularly part 2, I know it was a very long program, it was 2 hours each, but if you watch particularly part 2, on several occasions, the camera had panned on this painting in the back wall of a sanctuary of a church. And you may remember this, and it showed it several times, particularly right near the end. In the painting are these 2 very, very large hands of God that are open. And in the midst of it is this full body of Jesus with open arms. I might be the only person that can tell the story behind that, but I think it's important because it relates to what we're talking about in our book study. That painting is in St. Sabina Church in Chicago. It was done by Fernando Aristi. He was a Jesuit priest from Mexico, and I've known him since about 1982 when he was stationed at Holy Family Parish in Chicago, just south of the Loop. And it was an African-American parish community. And he told me that he was called once to the bedside of a dying parishioner, an elderly African-American man. And so he went to anoint him and pray with him. And he was encouraging the man to turn to Jesus and pray to Jesus. And this elderly Black man told him, "Father, I've never been able to pray to Jesus because I've only seen Jesus as a white man." And that touched Fernando so much that he's a gifted artist, obviously. He decided to make a painting of Jesus as an African-American person, something that African-Americans could look at and relate to and warm up to and feel that Jesus was close to them, primarily so people could be comfortable turning to Jesus in prayer. And that particular picture that he did long time ago was a huge media bliss that went all over. It was printed in newspapers and magazines in several countries, all over the place. Well, I was with him when he had just begun to sketch this particular painting that was shown on the program, the hands of God and the body of Jesus with open arms. And he told me the story behind it. His commissioning to do that did not come from the church in Chicago. It actually came from St. Peter Claver African-American Parish in Lexington, Kentucky. The pastor there, who was very much concerned about ministering well to the African-Americans, had commissioned Fernando to do a painting for their church. And so Fernando has spent 2 weeks there with the community. He talked with them. He learned about their history, et cetera. And then he went on retreat for a week and prayed on it. And coming out of the retreat experience and reflection, he was given this particular picture to paint for them to respond to their needs. They had a long, long history of being disenfranchised and being marginalized by the white leadership, lack of cultural sensitivity, being kind of held under the thumb or the heel of the white pastor, et cetera. And so his inspiration for that community was, when they come to church, they should see the hands of God open out, reaching to them, and the arms of Jesus outstretched to them, giving them a sense of welcome in their own church. And unfortunately, the parish wasn't able to come up with the money they thought they could to pay for the commissioning. So Father Mike Flager, pastor at St. Sabina in Chicago, who knew Fernando, asked him to do the painting in his church. And that's the one that you see. It's 10 feet high, 6 feet wide. I was at St. Peter Claver as a deacon, not assigned there as a deacon. I was invited as a deacon to preach a revival there. And I learned for myself from the people how much of the story that they shared with Fernando was true. The previous pastor who's retired, who was a white American, who had been there for years and years and years, the people told me themselves, he never said and celebrated the Sunday morning mass with his own Black community. He always had somebody else say the mass for them. He had a Saturday mass, which their church was overflowing with white American Catholics because he guaranteed they could be in and out of church in 25 to 30 minutes. And then he had a Sunday afternoon mass for those who wanted mass in the Latin tradition. And he relied on the money from the white people coming in from those masses to keep the parish afloat, as opposed to growing the African-American community and helping them be more self-sufficient and self-sustaining. When I was asked to preach the revival day, I said to the current pastor, he told me that this retired pastor still comes in and does that Saturday mass for the white folk and the Sunday afternoon mass for the Latin traditional folk. I said to him, well, as far as I'm concerned, the whole church is in revival, so I'll be preaching all three masses. So I got my confirmation about what some of the people had been through dealing with this former pastor. I preached that Saturday mass. Afterwards, one lady came into the sacristy. She spoke to the former pastor for a minute, and then she came to me and she said to me, that's the best homily I have heard in years. And I know he heard every word of it. And I just simply thanked her for it. The next day, this former pastor, who still has a key to the rectory and can come and go as he pleases, I don't understand that, but that's what it was. The next day, he was sitting in there having coffee before the next mass, and he says to me, that was a pretty good homily you preached yesterday. What homily service did you buy that from? And I said, what? He said, well, what homily service did you buy that from? I said, I didn't buy that from any homily service. I wrote that myself. And I said, and I'm happy to give you a copy for free. Okay, now I found that to be incredibly insulting, that he can assume that I wouldn't be capable enough to writing a homily with some quality and message in it to offer to the people. So that gave me some sense of the kind of attitude he had towards Black people. I'm just a visitor. Imagine the people of that parish living with that for years and years and years. So that's the story behind the painting itself.
Tom, do you have a question or have something you'd like to say?
Yes, I'd like to comment on Father's reference to the painting with the open arms. And I'd like to share an experience I had about 15 or so years ago. I was on the faculty of one of the Archdiocese of Louisville schools when it was common that we were closing schools and combining schools. And I was at a school that three schools were being considered to merge together. I was in a predominantly white school. Our school was doing quite well. And the other two schools, one of them was predominantly Black, had already announced if they weren't allowed to merge, they were going to have to close down. And the third school was maybe 50-50 white and Black. And they said that they could maybe survive one more year. And each of the pastors of the three parishes had to agree before that thing would be merged. And our pastor said that he was all for it, but the only way he would authorize it is if he had a unanimous vote of the parish council to merge. And they were going to have an open meeting one evening and allow anyone in the parish who wanted to speak about the issue to come. So what I did, I took a picture of our school doors slammed closed. And then I took a second picture with them wide open open, and I had 4 or 5 students as if they were waving the other kids in. And I went and made a presentation to that school or that parish council that night and let them know that these kids are going to be shut out. These kids who really, really need Catholic schools probably more than others. And you're going to shut them out, or you're going to welcome them. And I said, your vote is the key to that door. You can slam it in those kids' faces, or you can open wide and welcome them. And the meeting, all the visitors were asked to leave about 11 o'clock at night. And we learned that the parish council stayed until about 1:30 in the morning, debating whether or not this was going to happen. And I don't take total credit for that, but I want to believe that my presentation had some effect on them, and the schools eventually were merged. They all voted for it, and it's still a thriving school today. And I'm very proud of that.
Well, great, Tom. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Tom. And Father, thank you for sharing your painful experience, because it really helps us to understand racism and the reality of the pain that you and others have felt because of the culture we live in. Anybody else have something they'd like to share regarding what Tom said or what Father said, or anything about the program we watched?
My name is Ellen Lydian, and I have a comment to make on that. Tom, was the people with the parish council, was any of them in there Black?
I think it's go back.
No, she shouldn't have pictures. I found it. Her pictures.
I don't think so. I don't think they were Black. And I might even add that there were dog whistles among those who were opposed. You know, we don't want this to happen because we don't want our kids to have to go to a school with large class sizes. You know, those were some of the arguments. And there were obviously some racial overtones to it. But again, it was probably split about 50-50. You could hear the arguments, but I was really proud of our pastor to say that he wasn't going to approve it unless it was unanimous. And I'm sure they argued pretty hard into the night, and he was able to persuade them. Every one of them eventually came his way and said, yes, we're going to vote it. But I don't think in our parish, I don't think any one of the council members were Black. No.
I want to commend you on what you did, but the reason why I asked that is sometimes when there's a situation like that, that it has to be voted whether a Black school is going to stay open, more ears are heard when a white person speaks up, more so than if a Black person speaks up. And I do know that as a fact of just a few things that I've been involved in. So I want to commend you on what you did, and probably with you being a white person and speaking up and showing those pictures as you did, it probably not only made them want to vote to keep it open, but it probably also made them feel guilty. Now, if it was me that it came and presented it as such, then I would most likely 95% say that it would have been closed. So I just want to make people aware of some issues when it comes to a white person speaking up versus a Black person speaking up, even in this day of age. So I wanted to make sure that you all knew that, the difference there.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to say that I was trying to spread a little guilt among them, and that might have been a part of the success.
Well, evidently it must have worked, but I'm glad you did it as a white person instead of one of ours, Black person, and being turned down completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And it reminds us that, again, racism is not a Black issue, it's a white issue.
Mhm.
Yes.
So it's we as white people need to be taking this on. I'm on a board for the Catholic school that I went to in Pasadena, California. And because of the things that happened last summer, the private school has asked alumni to create a group to evaluate, to assess racism or any kind of bias with the faculty, the syllabi, and the board of directors. And I'm on the group that's working with the faculty. But the group that I'm working with, there's probably about 15, 18 of us, and there are only 3 white people. They're all people of color. And so just trying to make changes for something that they didn't do. And so that's really confusing to me. It's very hard. And at least our group here, those of us who are in this group, doesn't look that way. It's really reassuring for me to be a part of this discussion group because we all agree, we all believe and know that this is a white issue.
Yeah.
Albert Einstein would agree with you. Back in the 40s, when he came to the United States, he was appalled at racism and how pervasive it was here. And he made it very clear, racism is not a Black issue, it is a white issue. And with his experience with Hitler and what happened in Germany, I think he could look at it in a different way than white people who lived here could look at it. So he would definitely agree with you. And that puts the onus on us
Yes.
as white people to be advocates
Yes.
and listen to our Black brothers and sisters, not to speak for them, but to listen and be advocates.
Yeah. Mhm.
How many archdiocesan schools are west of 12th Street in Louisville?
None.
Right, none.
Oh,
0, yeah,
You wonder where that is.
yeah.
Well, there's a long history and a long story, and it was a very designed process, step by step, year by year. The biggest issue that I have with that, as I know it, is the decision-making folk did not include the Black folk who were affected by those decisions.
Right.
Yeah, they were treated as, the hierarchy made the decisions as a patriarchy without consulting the people that the decisions impacted.
They do that most of the time, don't they?
Yes, that still goes on today. It hasn't
Yeah.
stopped. It hasn't ended. Yeah.
So how long has it been since the community Catholic church, this community Catholic school is no longer there?
10 years at least.
It's been
I-
quite a number of years.
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought they were still going.
Oh, no.
Community Catholic is still going. Community Catholic Center is still going and thriving and doing a great job of helping people to get to Catholic schools. But it's not a school, it's
Not a
a
school,
center
Right.
in
Right.
Portland, but
Yeah.
it's thriving.
Good.
But there's no Catholic schools per se
Mhm.
west of 9th Street. Yeah. Yeah. Well, getting back to the book on white fragility, we're supposed to be looking at chapters 7 and 8, and along the same lines of what we're already discussing and sharing.
Father John, you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can, okay. I was saying that getting back to the book on white fragility, along the lines of what we are talking about and sharing, it's interesting that in chapter 7, Robin talks about racial insulation. The larger social environment protects whites as a group through institutions, cultural representations, media, school textbooks, movies, advertising, dominant discourses. And within this insulated environment, whites both expect racial comfort and become less tolerant of racial stress. A lot of the decisions, as I see it, that have affected the marginalization of African Americans, both in the society and in the church, has been this issue about the racial insulation by the decision makers, the ones who are in the position to make decisions and to carry out the orders of others. Tell me what your thoughts are about that. Maybe you've seen some instances of this in your own areas of where you have worked or ministered.
Going along with that, Father, I want to hear from other people, but Robin also talked about coded language, which Tom referred to when he said that instead of the people saying, we don't want our kids to go to school with Black kids, they said, we don't want large class sizes. So that's coded language when you use one word instead of the word that you think is offensive. And they said, you know, some of the other examples are using the word urban or inner city or disadvantaged. And that's part of that installation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be quiet now. We'd love to hear what some of you guys think about this issue.
The key thing that I maybe someone can speak to this from your own experience, but the key thing is, and I've seen this over and over, is this whole penchant with the white dominant culture to keep them comfortable regardless of the cost to anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that play itself out over and over and over again. And I hope that some of you may have recognized that or can recall some of that and share that with us from your own experience. I'm sure you must have seen instances of it somewhere if you think about it.
This is Cece Burns. I think as you talk about that, it's kind of that mindset that started with our 2016 election, where, you know, we have to find a group to focus on and like to blame things on. And, you know, that was the big issue about why we need to build this wall, because these people were coming and taking our jobs and raping our, you know, and there was no evidence of it. Mm-hmm. And it's like the jobs that these illegal immigrants were taking were, you know, they're doing this hot roofing work. They're doing the picking the vegetables work. It's like they are not taking anything from us. And I think that kind of fear, to me, it is also there and was there before that, but it was a fear, you know, geared towards the African-American people, the Black community, that somehow, you know, we don't have enough resources, that if you know, we let them in, it takes from us. And yet there's nothing to prove that. If anything, you know, what we do know in so many ways is when, you know, we have, I don't know, for lack of a better word, more integrated situations, they're richer situations, and we all benefit from them. But yet we seem to want to go to this stance of kind of ignorance is bliss. And because someone told me this, well, I have to believe it. And to not even look further into it and say, does this even make sense? You know, how can they take our jobs away when, you know, there's all these jobs still out there? And it, you know, it just is, I don't know, I guess I'm going in circles, but there's almost like this ignorance that we want to cling to instead of stopping and saying, does this really make sense? We aren't going to be threatened by these people. We aren't going to be hurt. We're actually going to be enriched by them. Anyway, that's my thought on it.
There's another example even going on right now in Georgia with them pushing for restricted voting. So that would be, you know, statewide, you know, what they're trying to do in Georgia.
Yeah. And once again, you have to look at who are the movers and the shakers that's trying to push that agenda, you know, and it's certainly not for the welfare of the entire community. It's to satisfy one group versus everybody else at their expense.
And the one group they want to satisfy, or we want to satisfy, are the people that have all the money and power, right?
Yes.
So, you know, it benefits me to support that group,
Mhm.
which, I mean, it really doesn't, but that's the mindset, you know, that's the mindset.
What's interesting, ironic, and hypocritical about this, what Cece was saying about this building the wall, et cetera, and is that so much of what is the Southwest of the United States today was Mexican territory to begin with.
Mhm.
And we went to war and took it from them.
Mhm.
Okay, and now we want to keep them out and call them, you know, intruders and immigrants, et cetera, illegal immigrants, et cetera. Well, if we look at the truth of the history, the ones who came in from Europe, they were, and I call them invaders. Okay, all you have to do is go through the history and learn the truth of the history. They were invaders. After they came in, took over the land, set up their own government, their own way, et cetera, then they decided anybody else coming in is either legal or illegal according to their terms. But there was no, the indigenous people didn't render anybody as legal or illegal
Mhm.
coming in the first place. But once again, once the dominant culture set up its structure according to its own rules or can set up its own norms, anyone that didn't fit that norms, they can label as illegal, as dangerous, as trying to take something from us that's not theirs, and all of this other stuff.
Mhm.
I have something to say about public school system. Um, that if you all remember in 1973, when we first had the classes, Seneca High School had been integrated since the ninth graders came in 1957. So it was the only high school in the whole city that was probably 20% Jewish and 10% Black and then white, Catholic, everybody. And then in 1973, when the busing started, it was mainly white people that just threw a fit, literally threw a fit. And now they're changing some of the system again. I don't think you saw so much in the Catholic school system, because a lot of people that didn't want to be in the whites, in the public system, they went into some of the Catholic schools too, to not be a part of this busing. And whites were not bused as much as Black children, but Black children have really taken the brunt of the major of busing to this day. So anyway, I remember all this history, because when our Seneca was integrated, our parents didn't do that. Our white parents, everybody just went to school. They weren't out demonstrating and being very vocal about what happened in 1973.
Marilyn, did you go to Seneca? Did you go to Seneca High School?
Yeah, I'm proud of my age. I graduated in the first class. That's why it was such a difference, because I'm a Hikes Pointer, and it was basically white. And what happened is that it was apparently a social experiment, which we found out about much later, that only 6 high schools in the United States participated in this experiment. And Seneca, when it opened, because it was a county school, at that time there were county schools and city schools. There were 2 different school systems. So Newburgh was a part of the county system. And people that I know, some of my people that I know said some of the Black students were disappointed because their whole families had gone to Central, for instance. And they were switched into Seneca. So and a great many of the people that went to Seneca went on to different careers, and a lot of people, and this is 1961, so women either but 80% of the women in the class went to college in 1961. George Unseld, I think he had a PhD.
And Diane Sawyer's from Seneca, and Carmel and our group went to Seneca, she said.
There was, well, yeah, you know, we always say Diane Sawyer was a 63 grad. I mean, people just remember her, but one of the big child care systems in the city, I can't remember, but George and his wife Jackie, who was also a Seneca grad, they had a very big, thriving preschool. Several of preschool in the different parts of the city. You know, and he became an alderman, so he got to be. But it was just really an interesting time. I found out later the Catholic girls that flunked out of Assumption or that was the closest high school, they were at Seneca. So there were just, you know, or Catholic families that didn't want to send or couldn't afford Catholic high school. They were at Seneca. We even had a fair number of Jewish people there at the school, and that's another group that's been discriminated against. One of the Jewish men he might be retired now, but he became the head of a whole diabetic research program at Harvard, and he might have just retired, but that's another group of people that have been very successful, and I think too that it helped us. Not that when I read White Fragility that I have issues. I mean, I thought too. I've just probably didn't have a lot of issues, but I do. I think it helped to go to a school like we did, because we found out with the basketball team, and we had a white principal, but if we couldn't eat at a restaurant, which was very common in the 60s, because this would have in 61, so this would have been the late 50s, 60s, the whole team would go back to the bus. And he had a problem with the black players not being able to stay in the same hotel or motel when they played out of town. So this was an issue that I wasn't aware of until I started going to reunions, and then we would all talk about and our black classmates would talk about different experiences that they had at the time, and that's all.
One thing
Carmel? Sorry, Father John, go ahead.
I was just one thing along the lines about the busing. A lot of what we have seen in the news clips and the media, et cetera, shows the angry responses of a lot of the whites with the black children going into the white schools for the first time, beginning with the whole integrating of the school in Arkansas, et cetera. And we see so much of the negative side of it with the adults, whether it's the community members, the teachers, the parents, or whatever. We don't put too much thought, I think, or focus on what it was like for a child to be subjected to that type of hostile environment as a child. Now we're so much more concerned about the welfare of children these days and, child abuse and all of this other stuff. But when you go back and look at what those young children had to be put through themselves, it had to be very, very hostile environment for them. And part of it is because, you can pass the law, you can put in a certain practice or program, but it doesn't mean that you take the time to prepare the people to accept it and accept one another in that program. So I think we should just think about, what did all this do to our younger generation of children at that time?
I don't know if you've been aware of go ahead.
Carmel had her, she's either way.
Well, I was one of those children, maybe. And as I said in the chat, I was honestly oblivious to a lot of it. I mean, later, I was at the later stage. I was not part of the, back in the 50s and that, but at Seneca in the 70s, I was there, and I was oblivious. Maybe I'm just weird, but I was oblivious. But one of the things I wanted to go back to being uncomfortable in the parish, some examples of white uncomfortableness in the parish. And what I do is I'm a church musician. So I have a lot of been doing music in parishes forever, from when the guitar masses first came out, and that was not accepted because it was uncomfortable for people. I was a little kid then, but I was a part of that as well. And then doing music at St. Joe's in Bardstown for a good long time. And at one point, I was the church pianist at St. Monica's here in Bardstown. And I think I told you that. And I knew I was not the right person for them, but I thought I'll help you out until you find the right person. And it was wonderful. I had a grand time and learned a lot of things. And then at one point, then I was back at St. Joe's, and the church, St. Monica's, burned. And so I immediately invited their choir to come sing with us at St. Joe's while their church was not functioning there. And I did get a little bit of pushback from that, not much, but just a little bit. And I'm like, their church is burnt down. They're in the choir. Let's invite them to our choir. Let's. So the interesting thing was that we had a lot of really good songs that we incorporated, and it was just fantastic in our group. And we still do a lot of those songs. And I have 2 points. One is that every time we do any of those songs, which we still do, we get all kinds of good feedback. We get a lot of good feedback. But I'm also aware that there are some people who won't talk to me, who will say, but I hear they were not pleased with that. Very few, but I'm aware of a little bit of that. But by and large, the people that talk to me, they're like, yes, yes. So in that same vein, I saw a few Hispanic parishioners in the pews, and I spent some time in Mexico as well. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to start singing the verses in Spanish. Well, let me tell you, I got feedback about that. Pushback. They're like, well, we don't understand it. What's the point? I'm like, the point is we have some parishioners here for whom that is what they understand. And can't we put some of those verses, at the very least, put some verses in? So, but they're uncomfortable. And that was not acceptable for them to be uncomfortable, even to make this family feel welcome. And I get that, because when I first moved to St. Joe's or whatever, I choose the mass I go to by the music that's there, because that's really important to me. And I will choose which mass I want to go to based on who's going to be doing the music. So I get that. But the when we are incorporating the songs out of the Black Catholic hymnal, I don't get nearly as much flack as I get mostly positive things. But when I put that Spanish in there, that wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. So there was an example that I could speak to.
Yes.
Marissa, do you have a comment?
Yes. So back to Father John, you'd asked like examples of how we're insulated with from how white people are insulated, and we don't really realize what's going on. And I think that happens so often, and that's why there is such that fear and that concern that we're going to lose something, is because we feel so threatened that our status quo and the things that we think we've worked hard for and that we think we haven't enjoyed some privilege for, that we actually, don't want things to change, even though we think we're open-minded and we're progressive. The fear overcomes it, which results in anger. And, reading the book, I see now there are many times that I've done that myself, where, somebody told me about their experience. And it's that uniqueness of what she talked about in chapter 8, that, you have to account for people's unique experience, where I had 2 employees who said a leader in our company and the 2 employees are Black,
kept reversing their names and kept confusing them. And they worked with them for years and years. And it just, of course, was ridiculous. And I said, oh, I tried to look for the good and say, well, they made a mistake, instead of saying just, I'm really sorry that happened. I wish I could do something to change that. Or, can you think of something that we could do to rectify this? Instead of sitting with them and understanding their pain, I tried to find a reason that it happened. So I look back again and again as I read this and think about all the times that I might have done that to somebody when they were expressing something, and trying to minimize the experience for them. So it's been eye-opening.
Yes. Oh, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Can I interject something here? So when I hear you say that, Marissa, I'm sitting here thinking back to, when I was in corporate America and resumes would come across the desk and people didn't want to, if you had an ethnic name, chances are we weren't calling you in for an interview because maybe we couldn't pronounce your name, or the dog whistle of, okay, that must be a minority or whatever, or there's, you're looking at that resume differently, perhaps. Whoever's going through the process. So the people who were calling them, these employees that had been there for years and years, switching their names, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was not a white person who went to that offending person and saying, hey, look, you know what their name is. You wouldn't be calling Tom Tim, for years and years. You wouldn't be flipping names. Why are you doing that? So we all, and I'm with you when I'm sitting there saying, there was a resume on my desk and a girl went out, a lady, she was in her 30s, let me look on Facebook. Maybe they have a criminal record. And I'm like, why would you even, because I didn't even have a Facebook page. Why would you even go to Facebook just because you thought a name sounded ethnic or sounded different than a white name? I'm probably not even using the right terms, to see if they had a criminal record. They had a 4-year degree. They had a great GPA. They looked wonderful on paper. We would bring anybody else in if their name was John Smith or whatever. I think that's where we really sit there and we isolate ourselves, or we want to say, no, I would never do that. But it's, to Renee's point, it's kind of hard to be the person who speaks up and goes, whoa, what are you doing? It's the same thing this summer at church. Father tried to speak out on the, I'm blanking on the terms. Okay, all of the protests, all of the marches downtown, all of the justice marches. And I had walked over to him after Mass and said, oh, I'm glad you said something about that. He was like, well, I'm glad you are, because the last 5 people haven't been. and it's that feedback. So that's just kind of my thought on it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
We've got 2 hands up, so let me get those 2 people and then we'll move forward. Barbara, you want to go ahead and go?
Sure. When I was a kid, I was born in Atlanta and really never really had any problems or anything that I was aware of. But when I moved to New Orleans, Father John, I lived there about the same time you did, and for 5 years. And they started integrating the schools, and they started with a high school, and they built a new high school for the girls, and they sent the boys to Thomas Jefferson and the girls went to Riverdale. And I said, why are they doing that? And they said they don't want the white girls to be around the black boys. Oh. So Yeah, the white girl. Yes, sorry, misspoke.
Mhm.
And I remember when those 6 young Black women came in, that's all there was 6. And when you said, I wonder how the children feel. Well, they took those girls, the white girls took those Black girls in the bathroom and just beat them up. And I don't remember any repercussions for those girls. I mean, that they knocked the doors off the walls in the bathroom. I mean, it was just horrible. And I kept thinking, it's going to get better. We're going to outgrow this. We're going to outgrow this. And then we moved to Cincinnati in 1965. And I thought, it's not so bad up here. Well, it was so hidden. It wasn't talked about. In the South, they talked about it. And I had to work really, really hard not to be prejudiced because I was raised that way. And I kept thinking, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about this? I even at one point, Father John, was going to ask you, what can I do about this? What can I do? What can I do to make things better? Can I say I'm sorry? I just don't know what to do. And I realized that's not your place to tell me to do that. That's my work. You'd said this is hard work. And it is. It's excruciating to read this book and to watch television and see that things, I don't think they're any better than they were in the 60s. I mean, maybe, but people's feelings, we're still stuck. And I watched Father Brian Massengill. I've watched several of his YouTube videos, and he said, his wish is that the church would catch up to God. Well, I don't want to put it all on the church. I want to put it all on us, the white people. I wish we could catch up to God because it's just so horrible. And that's all I have to say, but except that Renee, Father John, Ellen, I am so sorry.
Thank you, Barbara.
All
You're
right, one more. We've got Donna and then Father John and Susan. If we need to move forward, just let me know.
Okay, this is just a quick notice. When Carmel was talking about the choir singing in Spanish, anyone that's my age or older sang in Latin for years and years and years, and we had no idea what we were singing.
That's a great point.
And
And we didn't complain about that, did we? So it is a racial, yes. I'm glad you brought up Father Brian Massengill, Barbara. He calls this a soul sickness. And he says we really are called to pray. We're called to be truthful and to stand up and vocalize our support, but we do need to pray very fervently because I think you're on the right track. I don't think we're much further along the line than we were in the 60s, except maybe there's a little more awareness. I don't know. Father, what do you think?
Yes, I think that's a part of it. I've always said that the best education is to listen to the lived experience of the other person, whether it be individual or group. And there's so many layers of feelings and memories and some good, some not good that people have gone through in the past. To understand them and to understand how it has affected the person will give you a clue about what you're supposed to do to respond to them. I believe that God made all of us to be instruments of healing when there is pain. Okay, but we have to invite someone to be free enough and honest enough and open enough and us to be with them to understand what has injured them and then how I can personally respond to this in a life-giving and supportive way. Okay, and I think you've seen enough of the television clips and the videos and read enough to know how much pain was there then, and some of it is still here now. It has not gone away. But the more we listen to, we open up to forging a meaningful relationship with someone, open and honest and caring relationship with someone and understand what are the injuries or the scars that they're still carrying from past experiences, whether it be individual or communal or whatever. But the key is respond to how it has affected them, how it made them feel.
Joanne, did you have something you wanted to add? Joanne Brooks?
You're muted.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to say something about in the past. Father John, when you were at Epiphany, I was there. And I know when you came, you were taking the place of our priest. He went on sabbatical. And I don't know if you were about 6 months, I think, or something. And the White Epiphany was kind of uncomfortable in the beginning when you showed up. And weren't really sure how it was going to be now. And when you said mass and you did your sermons, and I don't know if you said let the church say amen, or if it was just automatically you're supposed to say amen. And in the very beginning, not very many people did that. They were pretty uncomfortable at just shouting out amen. By the time you left, the whole congregation it was every mass with, it was amen for everything you said. And, and it was just a matter of just getting to know you as a person, because everybody really hated it when it came time for you to leave. They really wanted you to stay. We really enjoyed you. So a lot of times it's just getting to know the people, take time to get to know them and who they are, rather than just, oh, well, he's Black. I don't want to get to that person. What do we have in common? Nothing, whatever. And really get to know people for who they are.
I will just tell you that when your pastor was getting ready to go on sabbatical, I was coming back from sabbatical, and I was called by the clergy personnel office to ask if I would be open to filling in on a couple of Sundays just to do the masses there. I completely shocked them when I said, well, I'll take the parish for the whole 6 months. I mean, they were just shocked and didn't expect that I would even offer, and maybe didn't think that it was even a consideration on their part. But the parish was open. I was free for 6 months. I said, it just made perfect sense to me. And I didn't know a whole lot about Epiphany, but I mean, I'm here to do ministry. So wherever there's ministry to be done, I'm here to do it. So that's really how I wound up being with you for 6 months. And I've run into a number of people from Epiphany, and when they always make such comments, I said, we did have a good time, didn't we? And they all agree, yes, we had a good time.
We did.
All right, Emily?
Hey, I just I'm so enjoying the class tonight and the discussions tonight, and I wanted to kind of echo kind of what Barbara was saying, and I think in a weird way it's ended up being to mirror what Father John Judy is saying, and it's hard to see and think about what has been in the past and go, well, we're really not very far now, and that is true, but there are incremental changes that can be made. Things like Father John saying, yes, I'll take on Epiphany for 6 months. I mean, that is one small incremental, but through these incremental changes that we can make, we can improve, and we continue to improve, and we continue to be as the way I think God intends us to be, and to treat each other with care and respect. And one of the things that I really like for Lent is the idea to add something instead of giving something up for Lent, and maybe supporting more actively, either through time or treasure, Black community organizations, or Black Girl Scout troops, or finding different ways to sort of make incremental changes that are for the good of our collective humanity. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Emily.
Emily, what a good reminder. I mean, it's so easy to look at the church hierarchy and saying they aren't doing anything, or the government isn't doing anything. But for each of us, what can I do today, tomorrow, or this week that's a good reminder. And thinking about what Father John did, you know, just putting his neck out there for a whole 6 months in a rich white parish. And it impacted a lot of people, and all of us can impact the people we meet. So last week I challenged you to broaden your bubble. I don't know if anybody did that. If anybody found something they could do that put them in contact with somebody that they hadn't been in contact before, with somebody of a different race or a different ethnic group, or I don't know if anybody had that opportunity last week. I know that's hard, but that's what this book is calling us to do, to really look at our own lives and where can I make a difference? Even if it seems really little, it's like a ripple in a pond. That ripple will expand because the person you touch will touch 2 or 3 more people. So just keep that in mind to reading, I guess.
I called Renee. She put her phone number out there. I called her.
Good.
I did too.
Well, you know, along the same lines about just doing the small things that can make a big difference. Those of you who, let's say, have been in the teaching profession or in the healthcare profession, I know you've had experiences of people who have never forgotten you, specifically you, because of how you served their needs at the time that they needed to be served. And it was a way that was life-giving for them, comforting for them, encouraging. It made a difference for them in a positive sense. And that's really what this incremental thing is all about. And we can never underestimate when we do just the right thing for someone, how much long-lasting effect it has on them. I'll tell you just a very quick story. I got a message from a young man who had called my former parish looking for me. And I was given his name and his phone number. And I returned this call. He said in the message that he saw me when he was 12 years old. So I called him and he said that he was at a parish out in a rural area. And I had come there to do a program at his parish, which was an all-white parish, when he was 12 years old. And he said that's the first time that he had ever seen a Black priest or a priest with that kind of energy and spirit in worship, etc. And he said, I just want to thank you for that because that experience has never left me. Now, we're talking 30 years ago. So 30 years later, he's decided he wants to look me up and just thank me for that experience, however that touched him in that way. So you can just never underestimate what far-reaching effects you can have on someone just to do any small thing that is supportive, encouraging, comforting, and life-giving for them.
Lynn, you had your hand up. Do you have a comment?
Yeah.
I was going to, are you saying Lynn? Yes.
Lynn.
I just want to say, I think you're very right, John, Father Judy, to, say the effect you have on people. And Susan, some of your wonderful, or whoever, whichever one of you, the resources you've given us, the YouTube videos or whatever. So because of my schedule, I couldn't go out and do anything directly, although I did call someone on the phone that was really totally outside of my range of connections, and that was very meaningful. And actually, we've done 2 follow-up emails. But the material, especially the interviews, I think it's on the New York Times. They're 5-6 minutes of an Italian, not Italian, Latino, an African-American, and Native person. Am I referencing the right thing? It's one of your sources for this week.
Yes, you are.
Very impressive. Very impressive. And I had never seen those before. So even that kind of contact can really enrich you for the next time I have more contact.
Yes. Thank you, Lynn.
Well, that's a really good point. I listened to some of those today too, and I missed last week because I had a conflict, but there are some things that we can do locally here. I signed up for to be a friend on Facebook with Change Today, Change Tomorrow, and they have lists of Black-owned businesses, and they have lists of Black-owned restaurants. And there are ways to reach into those communities, especially for those of us who have been stuck at home with inability to get out of our bubble, not even going to church, you can't really do much, but you can support those organizations with, the drive-by dinner that you pick up or ordering something from them online. It's not quite the same as the personal, but at least it gives you an entree into that, into the community that is really working hard. And there's so much going on in the West End right now that is coming from the Black folks who have, what do I want to say? They've felt the energy of the summer, and they're really tooting their horn, and they're spreading the word a little more. And so it's good for us. It's a good time for us to be watching out for them.
Yes.
And when you support a Black business, you interface with the people there. Usually you meet a little more diverse group. So I think that's a really good concrete move to make. Definitely.
In our youth group, we've been doing one of our retreats with Mark Bouchard, and he has a young adult who's African-American. Her name is Talisha. I can't think of her last name right now. Very, very articulate, very smart person. And our activity this past Sunday was that we were on a city council, and we needed to make a 1, 3, and 6-year plan to address some of the racial issues here in Louisville. And let me tell you, those kids working with Talisha in about 40 minutes came up with a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, and a 6-year plan on what they would like to see to help address racial injustice in Louisville. So it's really been, we approached the retreat, the overarching theme was racism, but we broke it down into, acts of service, works of mercy, and doing this 1, 3, and 6-year plan as a council. They really came up with some really good ideas, and Talisha, who I think she's at Catholic Charities, very, very knowledgeable young lady, very articulate, really listen to the kids, really help them to work through, because none of them, both of them, when we started, they were like, none of us know what Metro Council does, what a council does. And then by the time we were done, we had this beautiful plan laid out.
I hope you're going to share it with Metro Council.
Yeah, that's what Talisha said. She said you can invite your council member, and I was like, well, let me get through this first, and maybe I'll tackle that next.
Maybe you could put that as a bulletin insert. The plan. Spread the word.
Yeah.
Joan,
Yeah, we have incredible Black leaders in Kentucky. We have Sadiqa Reynolds. We have Charles Booker. We have a lot of faith leaders in the African-American community. We have, I can't think of my representative. Can somebody help me? Anyway, we have so many good people that are out there. We just need to support them. We need to support them. And I think we'll see some change. Attica Scott.
oh, that's right.
I want to interject something real quick, and then Donna, I want you to go next. I want to thank Kathy for mentioning Cindy for mentioning the resources, but I hope you got to read the really short article, El Paso's Bishop Mark Sykes, Black Lives Matter, because he's a Catholic bishop who's really kind of understanding racism. I love something he said. I just want to say it for the whole group. The word always comes to us crucified and powerless. Jesus let himself be powerless and crucified. And he said, in today's world in America, the word comes tortured, Black, lynched. Today we meet Jesus in those tear gassed, tased, strangled, and snuffed out. That's the reason why the church teaches a preferential option for the poor. But I think that's the reason the Catholic Church has to acknowledge Black Catholics too, because they have experienced what Jesus has experienced more than any of us white Catholics have. No doubt, reading that article. So if you haven't read that article, it's on your syllabus. It's worth it. Donna, what did you want to say?
Just, I agree with you. That's excellent. Just that I'm president of our condo association. And so I told them, I said, we need to get people of color on here, and I'm starting different committees. And I told them on those committees, so at least two people of color on each committee. So they agreed. So that's what we're working on.
Great. Sounds
What
wonderful.
a concrete step. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say that I have learned through all of this, looking into that things are very, very different all the way around in a person of color's world, meaning mindfulness has become a term that we are all familiar with. I know I've taken a lot of mindfulness classes and this, that, and the other, and it's about breathing and centering yourself. And what I have learned through some of the lectures at the Underground Museum up in Cincinnati, through their conversations that they've been posting online, is that things like mindfulness for me is very different than it is for a person of color, meaning I get very centered. They come to this with a great deal of fear and rage and anger and all of that. And so mindfulness for them can be a completely different look. The girl who is a sociologist or psychologist rather, that was talking about this in one of the lectures, talked about the fact that she actually uses song or dance, repetitive. She also talks about how much community is vital for all of them. So for that, I appreciate this big community. It's been great. So thanks. That's all I want to say.
Sister Julia, you want to say something? Unmute yourself.
I'm working on it.
Thank
you. Did I get?
Yes. Oh, you're muted again.
Okay.
There you are.
I have too appreciated the extra things that you have put out there for us to get on YouTube and articles. But as the more we share, the more I keep looking back in my experiences of working with or connecting with people of color, of African Americans. About 4 years ago, I was part of a Silver Sneakers program at the Beachmont Community Center in South Louisville. And we had a Black woman who was instructed us in Silver Sneakers. And she was so good. And the director of the center was moving on up to another promotion. He had been promoted, so the opening was there. And a group of us said, "Oh, Tanya, are you going to put your name in to become the director?" And she said, "Oh, I would like to, but I'm not sure." So we kept encouraging her. But on the other side, took the opportunity. I gathered a group of the people together, and we wrote a letter of recommendation so that she could get the position. And then there were 25 of us in the group. And so unbeknown to her, we passed the letter around so people could read it and then sign their name. And then we sent it into Metro Parks, and she was able to get the job. And she did a terrific job. She was so creative, and she opened up new programs for the center. And she even had the opportunity for the soccer, to get a soccer field through the I can't think of the purple. I'm trying to. What's our soccer team? The pro team. Well, yeah. Anyway, she was able to get a soccer field built on the property for kids of the neighborhood, and so it involved multicultural children. And so as I think back on how much I've been connected and tried to influence or try to help. But yet, so those are just some of the things that, as I reflect, that of the things that I have been a part of or experienced. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. If those of you who are Catholic in the Louisville Archdiocese, if you saw the last edition of the record that came out on Thursday or Friday, there is also a resource that comes from the Office of Multicultural Ministry, and it's called Walking in My Shoes, Challenge to Eradicate Racism. It's a very valuable resource, and anyone else, if you want to pull it up on the website, you can just key in Multicultural Ministry, Archdiocese of Louisville, and you should be able to download it. But, you know, that will answer a lot of questions of some possible things of what everyone can do, something somewhere in there. A lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of blessings will come from that for sure.
We'll send a copy of that to Joan. So if you have trouble finding it, let her know, and maybe she can share it with you. It's a valuable resource, like Father said. Do you want to say anything about it?
Well, this is a copy of it. I don't know if you can see it very close. It's a PDF file. It's about 5 pages of actual resources, and some of them are very short. Some of them are about things to learn. Some of them are about things to reflect upon, and some of them are a call to action. So they're very good. I will also, this is a separate, completely separate issue. I spend time on the computer in my retirement, and you can find all kinds of good resources. And if you want to look up some good resources on racism that are fairly short, Google TED Talks, racism. That's all you need to do. And you will come up with, one of the links will be a page of these 20-minute talks on all different topics of racism, social justice, you name it, it's on there. Redlining, lynching, and they're very good talks, and they're about 20 minutes long. So, plus, just Googling things, you'll find all kinds of stuff. That's a good starting point.
And speaking of resources, Joan shared with us that tomorrow, Robin D'Angelo is doing an interview with through the Metro United Way. They have 2,000 people signed up for that interview. And so if you haven't signed up, it's probably not too late. If you look back in your emails, you got an email about that from Joan, but you could probably also go on the Metro United Way website, and it's at noon tomorrow. So it should be very good.
Yeah, and the University of Rochester, New York, the only reason I got that is because I have a cousin who lives in Rochester, New York. Ibram X. Kendi is going to be their speaker. And I think I forwarded that out to you, but if anybody, for either link, if you didn't get it or if you're interested, just let me know. And Carmel, go ahead.
I'm sorry for talking so much, but y'all just get me going here. But I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, how important it is to talk to your city council member and your representatives, because we can do things on our own, but we also have to remember, in the spirit of how we've been talking, is that we need to be that voice for our Black friends, our brown friends who don't feel comfortable, aren't listened to even when they do talk. We need to be that voice for them. Now, not speaking for them, but finding out what's important to them, and then helping make that heard to our representatives. And our representatives on the state level, on the local level, even on the national level, are there to hear what we have to say. And when they hear it from us, it gives them courage to do something. And it's our job to tell them. And I really think it's important to not be afraid to call your elected representatives and let them know that this is important to you, whether it's about a very specific topic or just in general. They need to hear that. Call them up. Call them after hours if you just want to leave a message on the phone. That's real non-threatening. But call them, talk to them.
I agree, Carmel. That makes a huge difference.
The other thing about these resources is to think about, maybe there's some other people that you have contact with that you can share these resources with, to kind of spread this around a little bit more, let somebody else be aware of what's out there for them to look into, to listen to learn about.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes till our 8:30 time. So Father John and Susan, I don't know, for those who need to jump off at 8:30, if there's anything else that you would like to say for those folks.
One thing I want to say quickly is just thank you for sharing from your heart. And I can't tell you, last week, Linda's story and Marcia's story, I mean, they stayed with me all week. I think we touch each other and we inspire each other and we help each other do a better job the next time. So keep sharing. It really helps. Father, what else do you want to say?
I just want to say that every time we have a gathering like this, and particularly this particular book study, I think there's something very powerful that happens for everyone who is tuned into it. Whatever is shared is something that is of value to everybody else. And so I want to echo what Susan is saying, but also to just remind you that there is nothing that should not be shared, that you can speak to or share openly and honestly and sincerely from the heart, because we will all benefit from that, and I love the fact of how free and open everyone has been with the sharing, with the conversations, with the personal experiences. That once again, it's about listening to someone's personal experience. We all become enriched by that. So I also appreciate all of you that are in our group and look forward to the next few sessions.
Somebody said Bridget has her hand up.
Yeah.
You have to unmute.
Bridget, yeah, we'd love to hear what you're saying.
After the last session, I looked online to find this picture. I had cut an article out of a Chicago newspaper that had this image on and told about the artist. But the remarkable thing, and I don't know if I can get close enough for you to see it, is that this Jesus has a face that I could love. And also, the assumption that Jesus is white is so misconstrued. And I cut out that article from the newspaper and then eventually lost it in one of my moves. But last session just inspired me to look further. And if you look, this Jesus even could be a representation of the feminine, not just the masculine. So I'm so glad that you inspired me to search again, because I found this and I intend to frame it, because this is my Jesus, not the white one I grew up with, because this is the face of a true Jesus.
Oh, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, what's the artist's name? Because I tried to look too and I didn't find that. Who's the artist?
I found the photo, but I would have to search for the article to know the name.
On the paper.
We'll look too, because I really do like that image myself. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
That's not easy.
Okay, for anybody who needs to drop off at 8:30, I'm very glad that you joined us this evening, and we will have session 5 next Monday night. For those who would like to stay on for 15 minutes more, I will leave the Zoom call open for more discussion.
Maureen, I've been quiet tonight because I'm also working on my job stuff. I'm charting at the same time that I'm listening to you guys talk. But one thing I'd like to say to everyone is we are Black 365 days a year. We're not just Black during February. So whatever you take from this, take it the whole year. Make it part of your life. Because if you could only imagine the world that we have to live in, everything for us is white. We have to fit in. And I can only imagine what it would be like to turn on a radio station and be able to choose. They're all Black music. Which one do I pick today? Or go to the movies and all the people and all the actors and actresses look like us. All the awards shows look like us. It's a whole different world for us to integrate into the white world. And it's difficult. I went to a birthday party with my son, and it was a family that I had never met before. All of my son's friends are white, Mexican, all of the above. We have a multi-racial friendships, we'll say. And when I get to the birthday party, I was appalled because there was nobody there that looked like us. Of course, the kids, they didn't care. It was no big deal to them because he merged in with the kids and they took off. Well, I sat down with the boys' grandparents because that was the only seat that was open in the whole Pritchard Community Center. They stood up and walked away. I tried to carry conversations and merge into the conversation of that at the table. The next person walked away. Next person got up. And pretty soon I was the only person at the table by myself. That was a long birthday party. I could not wait until it was time to go. So it's different. It's different. Like I say, it's not a world that's meant for us, but we are forced to have to gel into it. I have to wear my hair a certain length so people don't feel that I'm aggressive. I have to watch the way that I dress and the things that I say. In my professional world, I can't be Black. I got to act like a Black white person to be able to make people feel comfortable. It's hard for me to be Renee, but if you know me, I'm gonna be Renee regardless. But it's different. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you for being Renee too.
Yes. There's a price to be paid for being free.
Yeah. Renee, there's a good culture here in Louisville. I work downtown Norton's. Now, downtown Norton's is one of the most multicultural hospitals in probably the city. And most of I worked OB, so the techs in labor and delivery, a great many of the techs who were very, very good. I don't know how many babies they delivered when the doctor wasn't there, but they were mostly African American. So there were a lot of African American employees at the downtown hospital. And I still prefer to go there. I mean, I live out near Baptist and Suburban, and when we go to a hospital, we've had a couple of times where the emergency room has had the ER people have had the ambulance has had to take us, and we say we're going downtown, and they go, what? They did that especially because one of the times that my husband had to go was during the Black Lives Matter. And they said, they might be near the hospital. And we said, we go to downtown Norton's. Just didn't bat an eye.
Yes.
My daughter worked in the, my daughter has a degree in culinary arts, and she worked as a cook baker and then arose to be a sous chef. And most of the people who are very good cooks, the food down at downtown Norton's, and there's free parking on Sunday, is excellent. And she had, and I'm proud of her for having a really good working relationship. She didn't put herself above anybody, and she has always respected everybody she's worked with and acknowledged their talents. So, and she still, when we went down there, she went down to see all of her friends in the kitchen. She has since moved into the Jefferson County public school system as a manager at a kitchen manager at one of the schools. But downtown Norton's is just dear to my heart, and still keep in touch with many people that work there. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
My name is Seal, and I'll have to say that this has been very, very difficult to read and to listen to. And Renee and Ellen, I just love what you say. I just don't know how you are so strong. And that was the show about the churches. The faith. And if that were me, I think I would have folded. But, and Stacey Abrams, man, I think she is awesome. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's just unbelievable. And I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Seal. Sister Julia has a hand up.
Yes, for those who have not had the opportunity to see that program on the Black Church, This Is Our Story, it's on tonight at 9 o'clock on KET if you haven't had a chance to watch it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Donna, do you want to say something?
Yes, I'd like to say something to Renee. I'm just so sorry that happened, and my heart bleeds that you had to go through that. And I'm really sorry. That was really totally uncalled for.
Yes. Thank you, Donna.
This is Ellen, and I noticed where it said the second question was, how does your friends, family members react when the topic of race is raised? Well, me working in the office, and I'm the only Black in the office, well, I can get along with anybody. But the month of February, when they show all of these movies on people getting lynched and, boiled in hot water or KKK and all that, I go to work with an open mind, but I'm still steaming underneath, because if anybody comes to me and starts talking about, did you see that movie last night? I'd be like, don't even go there, because it already brings up a bunch of hurtful feelings to you to watch these movies. And you don't want to hear anything about that like that at work, especially amongst all these white people, because they don't know what it is to have family, to think of such of your relatives, past relatives that came over here on ships and put together at their ankles and everything. And then half of the time they didn't have clothes on, they was vomiting on top of each other, and someone was killed and didn't make it and all that. So in the month of February, I don't want no white people coming to me talking about no movies that was on the TV, because it already hurts and it will ever stay. It's just an inkling inside your heart that will always be there, because we are Black. We will never be white. Now, I've been considered like a high yellow, but I'm still Black. But, amongst us family members and stuff, we'll talk about race topics and stuff like that, but it's not really that you'll be in the mood to really get really down deep. And, I talk on this particular, book thing, but I mean, something to where it really hurts you so bad that you just can't let it out. You can't let it out. And I do know a lady that was our neighbor one year, and she always had a bad taste in her mouth. She never wanted to talk about the past or nothing like that. And I remember her grandson was trying to do a family tree and different things like that. He still couldn't get her to talk. And then finally he showed me one day why she would not talk. She was the one that actually saw her brother being taken away on a wagon and being sold. So that's why she did not like to talk about her past. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, Ellen, on that topic about, talking with family about racism, unfortunately in my family, there are a couple of people that, you just can't bring it up. And my fear is, what their children are hearing from them, and how is, and that attitude is going to could perpetuate. Like my grandfather was very racist. I didn't understand. I understand how he grew up because he grew up in the 30s, but for whatever reason, I chose not to adopt that thinking. But with these people in my family, I wonder if their kids, from what the parents are saying, will be able to think differently instead of what their parents are saying. Like, for example, I sent my kids to Maupin, and this family member, the first words out of their mouth was, they're going to go to school with Black people. And I was like, and this is a problem because, I was like, and so I do fear for, for their kids, because I hope they don't adopt that attitude, but I know they hear it a lot and live it. And so it makes me wonder how they are going to grow up and approach this, and approach racism and approach people of color in their lives. And there are times that it really concerns me, but like I said, I hope that as they grow up, that, maybe they will, find, either a different path or a different understanding, for people of color.
I hope it wasn't me, Joan.
No, it wasn't you.
I wanted to answer Father John's question from earlier about, the insulation question. And I don't know about everybody else, but that's why I'm here, because I am so frustrated about trying to have a conversation or tried to discuss even things like the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera, and running into white people that just immediately, whether they're friends, family, coworkers, whatever, where they immediately come up with the discomfort, and they short circuit the conversation in one of every way that was mentioned in the book and there beyond. And it is making me nuts. Like you can't have an open conversation because this is so, just the broaching of the subject causes discomfort, and it must be shut down. It must be short circuited, and we have to change it. Or, again, you get aggression in your face. And now suddenly what was supposed to just be like, let's talk about this, has turned into a full-blown fight and all kinds of carry on. Like, I just want to have a conversation. So I'm very grateful again, I said at the beginning, that Joan was able to convince our pastor to allow this to happen, because this is what needs to happen. And that's why I'm here. And I hope that's why a lot of other people are here, is just, let's talk and listen. And that's, what I feel like where we need to at least start.
Good point. And
Linda, there's always the hope that too.
Go ahead,
just very quick, I was just going to say, there's always hope that just because you raise the question, regardless of how they react on the spot, you just might get them thinking about something that they did not want to deal with.
Right, you're planting seeds, kind of. And Linda mentioned last week how she was had a very difficult encounter with someone, and she made a conscious effort to build relationship with them. She steered clear of the subject, but she wanted to build relationships so that maybe at a later date, she could have a meaningful conversation. Because all of this fragility is unconscious, subconscious. It's reflexive, according to Robin DiAngelo. So people are reflexively reacting to what you say. But as you build a more authentic relationship with somebody, you might be able to start making conversations. It's kind of a process, I think.
Yes, yes, very much so.
All right, with that, final words of wisdom, my friends, we will go ahead and wrap up for this evening. Thank you all for hanging around for after hours and some camaraderie and friendship. And we will see you same time, same channel on next Monday. So everybody have a great week and enjoy some of the sunshine.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank
Be
you,
blessed.
Father.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Continue to be blessed.
Thank you.